Our next speaker is Michael Fairbanks. Michael Fairbanks is co-founder of Seven, a philanthropic foundation run by entrepreneurs. He co-wrote Plowing the Sea, Harvard Business School Publishing's landmark book on enterprise solutions to poverty, and edited In the River They Swim, a collection of essays from leaders of developing countries. He has been the senior advisor to President Paul Kagame since 2000 and is a citizen of the United States, European Union, and Rwanda.
Hey, are we recording this? Do I have to use this? Can I move around? I'm talking to you.
Yeah, you can move around.
Okay, good.
Let me know if my voice isn't carrying, and I'll go back to the microphone, but I can't talk in one place. It's a problem. How many people here are undergrads? How many people are grad students? Professionals in the field of international development? How many are U.S. citizens? And how many from other countries? How about from poor countries? Not that many. Where are you from?
From Rwanda.
Yeah. Where are you from? Yeah.
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Tough duty. Every country in the world, whether it's Rwanda, or Southern Sudan, or Nigeria, or even if it's Connecticut, has 7 forms of wealth, 7 types of capital. Just shout out for me 1 or 2 of those before I start giving you the answers. What are this? What are some of the 7 types of capital? Sorry? Intellectual capital.
Social
That's
capital.
1. What else?
Social capital. Human capital.
Social capital is sort of a meta-category for 4 others, so I'm going to leave that out for now. There was another answer?
Human capital.
Human capital, good. What's the difference between intellectual or knowledge capital and human capital? Anybody know? Human capital has legs, right? It's skills and abilities, and it can leave the room. Very easy to get on a plane, it could go away. Knowledge capital is research and development, library, archives, international patents. It's electrons now. You can push a button and it can go away, but it stays in the same place at the same time. That's only really 2 so far. There's 5 more.
Resources?
Yeah, let's call them basic factors and include location, sunshine, subsoil assets. That's 3.
Financial capital?
Yeah, money. You know, the velocity of money, international reserves. So that's 4. Good.
Relationships.
Relationships. That's good. Where are you? Yeah, that's good. That's kind of deep. And that involves a couple of other categories. Let me get back to that one. So I'm going to stay at 4 for now. What else? What else? 3 more. No. I see where you're going. That's a good thought. That's not where I want to go right now. What else?
Human-made capital.
The environment is a basic factor. What else?
Property.
Human-made capital.
Human, we've already got that. Human capital.
I mean, no. Human-made capital.
Oh, man-made capital.
Yeah.
Good. Buildings, roads, satellite dishes, so that's 5. 2 more.
Oil, gold.
Basic factor. Subsoil assets. What else?
Political.
Let's call that institutional. Norms, Douglas North said, you know, norms of behavior are institutions, right? Institutions are, you know, rule of law and democracy, so that's 6. And this is always the 7th one that nobody gets, because fish don't understand the water in which they swim. What? Nope.
Morality.
Sorry?
Morality.
No, that's an illustration of
Cultural. It's cultural.
And morality could also be very much a kind of institutional capital, because morals are norms, right? A little bit of art to this. The 7th one is cultural capital. Oh, somebody said it gets no credit because I didn't hear it. But there's 3 types of cultural capital, right? There's, you know, things like punctuality, which is sort of a norm of behavior too. There's the explicit articulation of culture, like libraries and fashion, music, and food, things you can sense. And then there's mental models, a concept from 1948 by Kenneth Craig upgraded by Peter Senge in the 80s, Chris Argyris and others, which means it's how you attach meaning to life in very specific ideas. Like, I can predict the future of a country based on asking one question of its citizens, and I can predict the future of that country's prosperity better than the IMF. If I just ask one question, you believe in competition. And if a country believes in competition, it tends to be prosperous. If it doesn't believe in competition, it tends not to be prosperous. Competition fosters human initiative, it spurs innovation. It's a positive force for change in general. When you go to Venezuela and say, do you believe in competition? They say, no, that's a quaint North American concept. Why would we have two companies doing the same thing? That's ridiculous. But then you go to Silicon Valley and say, do you believe in competition? They say, yeah, especially when I lose. You say, what do you mean, especially when you lose? They say, because I actually don't mind losing for a while. And parenthetically, venture capital nowadays is not to build scale. It's to build a runway so you could fail a bunch of times until you figure out what you're really supposed to be doing. So what the venture people say, what the software people say, what the biotech people say is, I would rather find out how I'm going to fail faster than anybody else realizes. I would rather fail frequently, fast, and most importantly, originally, because that's how you get to be successful. You know what the problem going to Yale is? The problem with going to MIT or Harvard or one of those types of schools? Is it attracts brittle overachievers who spend their whole life avoiding failure. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world are people who left those schools early. Because the environment tolerates failure very, very poorly. Right? Someday I'm going to write my failure biography instead of my impressive biography. And my failure biography is a lot longer and in reality a lot more impressive, just in the wrong way. The schools I didn't get into, the investors' money I lost, the things I really wanted to do but didn't get to do. But those were the conditions that set me up to do the things I wanted to do. So there are 7 forms of capital. The bottom 3, basic, man-made, and financial, are easy to measure, easy to see, and have hardly anything to do with true innovation. The higher forms of capital, institutional, human, knowledge, and cultural, are highly correlated with innovation, but impossible to measure and impossible to see for the most part. Now, that's what the government and the civic sector, NGOs, ought to be working on. Taking the rents from the lower forms of capital and investing them in the higher forms of capital. What should a company be doing? A company, if you want to judge the quality of a company and its impact on the world, there are 4 things. Number 1, does it create unique value for a consumer who's willing to pay a high and rising price point for it? Number 2, is the rate of return to the shareholders and the owners above average and also high and rising, compensating them for the innovation that they're creating, the rational risks that they're taking, the good that they're doing. Number 3, are the wages of the employees high and rising? Do they have a safe and secure place to work? Are they learning? Are we improving human capital skills and abilities? And number 4, are future generations being served because this company is paying taxes, not polluting the air and the water and the land, and perhaps doing some of its own philanthropic activities? And if a company passes those 4 things, it's a great company. Now, what's the difference? I'm going to use an unprogressive term. I'm going to annoy you. This is where you part ways with me, because the environment is going to be. But what's the difference between the first world and the third world? You know, no one says third world anymore. It says unprogressive. The difference between the first world and the third world is the first world competes on lower forms of capital, which are the most easily imitated advantages a nation can possess. When you compete on easily imitated advantages, you compete on the dimension of what? Price. You can't lower your transportation logistics price. There's only so much you can do to the currency. So the only part of the cost structure you can relentlessly push down is what? Labor. Which means the harder you work, the poorer you get. Which means the only competition you're really in is to see which nation can stay the poorest the longest until its society disintegrates. And that's what we're seeing in the Middle East right now. That's what we're seeing in the poorest of the poor countries. The other difference between the first world and the third world is that the first world has a crack at creating companies that have all four of those qualities: customer value, shareholder value, worker value, future generation value. But in a poor country, there's only two of those four that are really being served: the customer, or else the value proposition wouldn't exist, and the owners, which tend to be elite families that operate in a conglomerate environment. But the worker, wages are pushed down, and the environment is often destroyed. So it's kind of a four-box matrix, right? 7 forms of capital, C, O, W, and F. And then this, up here in this thing is when all four of these components are served and you're competing in higher forms of capital, you are super productive. And that's the goal. And Ted said earlier, how do you get there? Informed choice and timely action. What's that a definition of? Business strategy. The truth is, most of the people representing NGOs here today will never scale their enterprises. These are incubators, these are hothouses, these are hybrids, these are fantastic ideas by brilliant entrepreneurs, and most of them will never grow. That's the inherent problem in a not-for-profit model. Pulled down by the weight of its own gravity. But a business proposition can scale a lot more because the profit motivation allows you to do that. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Higher forms of capital, COWF as a company. It turns out that globalization, which we'll define as when everything mixes with everything else, is this incredibly positive force for change. When you're an inch better than everyone else in the world, all the benefits come to you. When you're an inch worse than everyone else in the world, you're devastated. It used to be that if you were born in the wrong country, in the wrong village, with the wrong family name, you were born poor and you died poor. And if you were born in the right country, in the right family name, in the right town, you were born rich and you died rich. Globalization has changed all that. Because with informed choice and timely action, you could be born poor and die rich, really easily. But you know what my favorite part is? You can also be born rich and die poor, more easily than in any other time in human history. Prosperity is a choice. It's a very clear set of choices. And the question is, the people here today, are we willing to work hard to go out and inform those choices and give those choices to other people? Indeed, are we willing to make those choices for ourselves? Thanks very much for your attention.